Hello, this is Diana with Artfully Yours, and welcome to the beginning of my acrylic painting tutorial series. And I haven't made an acrylic painting tutorial series in a few months. I'm using new camera angles, so I apologize for how my head gets in the way at certain points, and I'm going to be working on that in the future, improving the camera angles. So right now I'm just using orange. It's probably, I have it down in the description box, the materials list. It's probably cadmium orange. If you check my materials list, it will just tell you for sure. But generally it's orange with water and just going back and forth, as horizontal as possible. And I found out that this first layer is not enough, and I go back later in the video. You'll see that I go back for second layers of these three colors that I put in for the sky. So actually I'm trying to do a second layer right now when it's wet and it's not working. You need to really let it dry before you do a second layer if you want to actually have a second coat that covers the white little specks that show through, which also can be achieved by if you do an underpainting. So in the future I would do an underpainting for this, for all my acrylic paintings. Over to the right, the light is glaring on there, and it looks like I did not paint on the right side, but that's just the light glare. I've completely painted both sides. Now, that's a magenta, and the magenta does color mixing all but on its own. It's really easy when you overlap. I'm overlapping the magenta with the, I'm overlapping the orange with magenta, and then it color mixes automatically. Now, while it's still wet, I am using cerulean blue, and of course it's turning purple right now because the magenta and the blue create violet, and it does the color mixing really on its own just by overlapping one wet layer with the next wet layer. In a few minutes, I'm going to be adding white to that. I am adding a touch of white, I believe. I'm adding a touch of white to that. Looks like violet, pretty much violet. And I'm adding a touch of white, but in a couple minutes I'm going to add some more white. And I'll just add white right on the canvas and do the mixing right on the canvas. Here's where I go over for the second layer, and as you see, I already have put in the sun and just used a 1-inch round brush and just made a circle. It's very easy to make a circle with a 1-inch round brush. Just go around and with just white have put in the sun. And this is the second layer that I'm doing right now because I was not happy with just the first layer showing through. The colors were too transparent and it was showing through, the canvas was showing through. So that usually will happen, and there's two ways to resolve that. Either you do second layer like I'm doing, or you do an underpainting, which I'm going to show that in my next video. It's at this point that I'm going to add more than just a little bit of white in about a minute. Right there to that was cerulean blue, but it became completely violet. So there I add the white, and it's a little bit too much, but I keep mixing it in, and I think I add a little bit of cerulean blue on top of that to tone it down, because I did add a bit too much white there right on the canvas. So I add cerulean blue on top of that to tone it down. And this is where I apologize here for this camera angle where my head and shoulders and back are in the way. I will be improving that in my next video, and it actually near the end of by the middle to end of this video, it improves somewhat, that I get the idea that I need to sit back, which is hard to do. You sit back and paint when I'm trying to paint details. So I'm going in with white and yellow, and a touch of white. And then I'm adding the orange. And I keep seeing that it's not the right color. That's too bright. I'm trying to go back with some orange. And doing a halo around the sun. And then when you are blending the halo around the sun, you do not want to pull up the purple into the orange. You kind of want to keep going in the direction down on both sides, and not up from the purple. Purple into the orange is not going to work right for the halo around the sun. So you're blending down on both sides. So I could just kind of sketchy with the yellow there. Don't always blend it. I'm not trying to blend it totally in. Just touching lightly with the brush to the tip of the brush to the canvas. A feathery touch. So closer to the sun, I am trying to blend that more, but as it gets further from the sun, I make it a little bit, the halo more sketchier and not trying to blend it in. And I am using a 1/2 inch round brush right now. So I just clean my brush and I'm drying it off. Yeah, I apologize for that glare on the right side of the canvas. Again, I believe that's a 1/2 inch round. I keep turning my head because I'm looking at my reference picture. My reference picture actually is a digital painting. I actually did this idea in a digital painting to work up the idea and printed it out, and using that as my reference. It was first based on a photograph from www.stocksnap.io. I found you can find photos with no licensing issues, and this type of the sun and the sky like this was inspired by one of the photos that I found on that website. So for putting in the clouds, I am just using straight white, and I believe, yeah, the blue still is wet, so there is some mixing of the blue. I don't really want the clouds to stay completely white right now, so that's okay that the white is mixing in with the violet blue right now. and just using a circular motion and trying to make the tops of the clouds uneven. Don't try to make any kind of pattern. And I smooth out the bottom of the clouds, thinking that's the effect that I wanted, but later on in the painting, I realized though that I want the bottom of the cloud to be a little bit more puffier, and I might attempt to adjust that later on when the painting after the painting is done, because I would have done that right now. I would have done that then if I had noticed that about the clouds, realizing that I really would have liked to have them more puffier at the bottom. That's when I could have more easily made the adjustment, but because I noticed it later, I make the adjustment later in the painting. So now going in with the Cerulean blue. This time it'll stay true to Cerulean blue. It's not going to mix with anything except for the white. I would have to consider these clouds pretty much abstract clouds. Pretty stylized and abstract. I'm adding a hint of white with the blue. And if you're following along, I hope there are people that will be following along. It's just, you can pause it at any time. I mean, this is a perfect free art lesson, and you can do it at your own pace and pause it and stop it and let the painting dry and start the painting again at your own pace. That's the wonderful thing about YouTube free art lessons. So that's a 1-inch flat brush, and I just washed it and drying it out, and I'm going to I'm going to mix white with the magenta because I'm going to tone down. It's very red near the sun, and I'm going to tone that down with a light magenta. So I apologize, my head's in the way. You'll see it better on the other side when I paint the other side of the sun. It's pretty much a pink to lighten up that. It's not showing on camera, but that's a very strong red. The magenta turned out to be a strong red near the sun, and I wanted to tone it down to a lighter magenta. Just adding white to the magenta. You can see I got pretty much a light medium pink there. And I'm blending a lot, blending. So that's orange, and I'm in my materials list in the description box. I believe it's a cadmium orange, and that's a 1/2 inch round brush. And so there I went in with pretty much straight yellow with what am I mixed it? Yeah, it was too much white there. I want more. I want more yellow. Pretty much. Okay, so I just went ahead pretty much with almost straight yellow with, well, tone, lightened up a little bit with the white, and you can see how I did the halos around the sun with the more yellow closer to the sun. And I'm adding some of that yellow to that cloud now. It's pretty subtle, very subtle, adding the yellow to that cloud. So I just cleaned and I'm drying off my brush. Yes, I'm still using the 1/2 inch round. For all the clouds, I'm using 1/2 inch round brush. That does not look like I was using yellow there. I'm pretty sure that was a violet, magenta with the blue, with lots of white. Right now I'm making a light blue, very light blue. And painting that into one of the clouds, underneath the cloud, blending it out. But also going to be a very light shade of blue on the cloud, on one of the clouds. So each cloud's going to kind of have a different color. Like the one closest to the sun will be kind of like a light yellow. It's pretty subtle. Another one will be more bluish cloud. Another one is a more magenta colored, very light pink cloud. I'm making some clouds longer there, longer, shorter, puffier, thicker. So the variety is a good thing, rather than making organic, natural things from nature in some kind of pattern. It's better to be random and try to break up patterns where you avoid making patterns that look too, I can't think of the word. It's because things in nature do tend to go in different directions and be more random. So I'm making that light blue again. Still the light blue. I'm using that for actually making a new cloud right there instead of straight white, using light blue. I keep turning my head as I said before, because I'm looking at my reference picture. And in my reference picture, I had made the clouds different, more how I wanted them to be. So I do try to make the adjustment later on in the painting near the end. It's fun to paint clouds, even if they're not totally realistic looking. Actually, I have to try out a new brush that I have that's supposed to be, it's a very fluffy brush, and I can't wait to try it out later in this painting to see how that works with the clouds. So back with the magenta, adding a touch of white. Yes, painting that cloud in a light magenta. And there, because I didn't want to have my head in the way the whole time, I skipped forward so you could see it's very subtle, the finished cloud with it had the light magenta on it. Now I'm adding the touches of cerulean blue and touches of white to the magenta, which that creates a violet, a very light violet. And now I'm making an orangey color, which ends up being peach, orange with quite a bit of white. So one cloud's going to be peach colored. So I'm showing a straight-on video shot of the painting right now at this point, and I'm really loving how the clouds are different colors, and the sky is really nice and vibrant up near the sun. The magenta clouds look really cool. So I love how that magenta and the orange and the yellow, so vibrant near the sun. the next step is going to be painting the pine trees, the evergreen trees, pine trees, at the very bottom of the painting. So I'm using a small to medium fan brush. Either one will do, a small one, medium one. And I'm using a lot of water with the black. I want it so that I don't have any problem with dragging the brush. So the brush acts just like almost like an ink. So first it's straight down vertical. It's really easy to make these pine trees with this fan brush. It's really cool technique. At least for silhouette. A lot of things, silhouettes are fun to make, silhouette paintings. So there you just see it's back and forth horizontally, kind of like tipping it at different angles. I make sure that I just keep having enough water in the black so it is just like ink, just like black ink. So it's pretty easy, just vertical lines, straight down. It's not hard to make at all. Because I do have a problem making straight lines, but not these small little straight lines. And then back and forth, smaller at the top, and then wider down at the bottom. And don't make them all the same size, kind of like random, and don't make like small, big, small, big, small, big. Like, you try to stay away from patterns like that because they don't exist in nature. I mean, some parts of nature, I mean, of course there's a lot of patterns found in nature, but say for a forest of trees, we're not going to see a pattern of big, small, big, small, big, small. So make it random, like medium, small, large, wide, thin, clumping some of them together. So I finished the trees at the bottom, and that's silhouettes of trees. That's why we're not going to see the color necessarily, the green. And that's an angle brush. That's a 1/2 inch angle brush. Actually, it's my first time using an angle brush. Again, the paint is inky, not so much that it's dripping, like my paint is not dripping down the palette. So I'm trying to figure out, so just under the halfway point of the middle of the painting is where I start the tree branch. And I try to curve it. I curve it up and not so that it goes right through like a good part of the cloud, kind of like off to the side. So I was aware of, I didn't want to go through like the puffiest part of the cloud or something like that. So down and there you can see it went under the puffiest part of the cloud. And a tree branch is always wider, like where it comes off of the tree. So there, we don't see where it's coming off the tree, but it should be wider right on the left side, slightly. there's a demonstration of how to use the angle brush. It's the smallest part of the angle goes first. And if you're trying to make it a branch is going to go from thick to thin, you just relieve the pressure on the paintbrush. So it's pushed down hard for a thick line, and then as you're making the tree branch, you're lifting up pressure off of the brush until it just becomes a thin line. Until almost you're like pressing down hard and then lifting up, up, till it's almost just like the tip of the brush. It's the light pressure that creates the thin lines. Just very light pressure, and your paint should be very thinned down with water to make it easy to make those thin lines. I think it's fun making those very thin tree branches. Just anywhere you want to put them, anywhere that you think looks right, your own artistic sense. Again, it's a silhouette of a tree branch, so I'm not bothering with details or the colors, the true colors of the tree branch. Now I'm using a very fine detail brush. That's probably, of course, mine is not the finest that you could get, but it's one of the finest, tiniest, thinnest brushes that I have, and very pointy. So you very want a really pointy detail brush, because the birds are going to be next, and here I have to lean in really close to do the bird, so you'll see the shape I make, then I step back so you can see. So there I've already made the circle, and the circle is above the tree branch. Then a smaller circle for the head. Then I made the tail shape. Then a tiny one leg, two legs, then a pointy part for the beak. So I could not show that while I was doing it because I was like my face was right in it when I was doing it. So next bird, the same things, just round shape, circle for the body, tinier circle for the head, tail, tail shape down touching the branch, two legs, pointy shape for the beak. And there, I don't like how the leg looks, so I will be fixing that. So I'm going to dry it. I'm going to dry it, and later off camera I fix. So the next step I'm going to do is make the clouds look more fluffier, and I'm using a 1/4 inch round brush that is wet, and I want to make my paint pretty wet so that it will easily, that it won't drag, and it'll easily just paint over the tops of the cloud. So I paint using that round motion. I'm painting only just the top of the cloud with a pretty wet white paint, and now I'm going to come in with a dry brush. This brush is completely dry, and it's a dry 1/2 inch round. And so I just keep doing that circular motion on that wet paint, and it's going to drag out and blend out the paint to give the fluffy feeling at the top of the cloud. And now I'll do that. I'm going to do that on every cloud, but I'm not going to show on camera every cloud, because this video is getting to be long, and I need to cut out some things. So right now, I think you'll get the idea. I don't have to do every cloud. The tops of the clouds with the wet, rather pretty wet white paint, and then with make sure it's a dry brush, 1/2 inch round dry brush, and just blend, and it will just blend out. It'll blend out the top of the cloud and also blend it down into the cloud and above the cloud, and kind of give a misty effect. There I am going back and forth, because that's kind of like the flat part of the cloud that I had painted. And now showing again the same technique. And you can keep going over and over this until you have it just the way you want, the way that you're happy with it. Even when I stop doing this step, doesn't mean that you can always put the video on hold and keep making the clouds as fluffy and as misty as you want. Next step, I'm going in with purple, and that's Prism purple, and it'll tell you the exact name in my materials list in the description box, with a 1/4 inch. I'm going to change that brush. It should not be a 1/4 inch round brush. I'm going to change that to the fan brush, right? That's a small to medium fan brush will work. And I'm using straight Prism purple, or Prism violet, maybe it's called, adding water, making it pretty wet. And now I want to add this violet into the trees, because I thought the black silhouette was just too harsh and didn't add enough interest, and I think this violet in the trees adds a lot more interest to the silhouette. So I kind of just do that same motion that I had taught you before with the. So you don't have to go straight down vertical. You could just do the whole thing back and forth horizontal brush strokes. So there's more of a close-up. And it's pretty subtle. You can't see it on camera as well as you can see it in person. but you can see it's adding a subtle difference. Now I'm adding a little, let's see, what step am I on now? That's a 1/4 inch flat brush. Right, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm going to add the highlight on the tree branch next. So it's a 1/4 inch flat brush with white and a little bit of violet. I try a little bit of violet with it. Just doing it on the top edge as a highlight. Now, the technique of the brush stroke I'm going to show in a minute. It's like the it's a short brush stroke, kind of like that you keep doing, not one long brush stroke. It's just short little brush strokes. Short little brush strokes continuously does give kind of a little bit of the texture of bark. Yeah, just short little brush strokes like that, and keep going along, keep moving it along. And then I decide the violet better. I try the orange, because the orange on black is going to give the effect of brown. And I decide that it's up to you whether you just like the white highlight, a violet highlight, an orange highlight, or orangey brown highlight. And now, so now that the painting is finished, and I'm showing close-up shots of different parts of the painting, I can see that violet in the trees. And the clouds, I think, are a lot better with them puffier and smoothed out and blended out, so we don't see such hard edges on the clouds. I like that with the fuzzier edges on the clouds. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please give me any feedback in your comments below. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you're following along. Please like, comment, or subscribe, and check out one of my last videos, which was making 3-dimensional butterfly embellishments out of cardstock. Thanks so much.